What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hoops and Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Isaac, and today we're just going to be going over the NFL Pro Bowl rosters for the 2024 Pro Bowl and just talking quickly about each player for maybe a minute at most. So, in the AFC, our three quarterbacks are going to be Tua Tagovailoa, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. And with Tua, obviously he's had a great team around him, which makes me believe that that's a main reason why he's a good quarterback, because before Tua had Tyreek Hill, he wasn't as great as he is now, but he also could have just developed. I think it's more of just a thing with like the players around him being really good. He has two great receivers with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. He has two great running backs with Davon Chain and Raheem Mostert. So Tua mainly probably succeeds through his team, and I feel like if he didn't have any of those wide receivers or running backs, he wouldn't be as successful as he is today. Next up, we have Lamar Jackson, and with the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, he doesn't have a great group around him, but he also isn't as much of a throwing quarterback as he is a running quarterback. He likes to run the ball a lot, and that's been his thing since he came into the NFL. He's just been a great running quarterback, and that's what a lot of teams look for nowadays. I feel like they look for more of like a rushing quarterback that can throw a little bit more than just a throwing quarterback like they would back in the day. But Lamar is a candidate for MVP, and if he does win this year, it would be his second MVP of his career. And finally, we have Patrick Mahomes, who we have, honestly, I would say we've seen him struggling a little bit this season with this is his second season without Tyreek Hill, I want to say, because last season he didn't have Tyreek Hill, and they ended up going to the Super Bowl. But this season, his wide receivers aren't doing great. Obviously, we've seen Kadarius Toney with his struggles, the offsides thing, stuff like that. Marquez Valdez-Scantling he just can't catch the ball. He has no hands, and I mean Rashee Rice has been doing pretty good. Has the most like yards after catch as of like a week or two ago, I think. And so I mean Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce hasn't been doing great at the end of the season. He started off strong, but towards the end of the season he started to not do so well. But I mean, overall, the Kansas City Chiefs aren't terrible, just not as good as they have been in the past couple years. One player that I think got snubbed out of the Pro Bowl for a quarterback is Josh Allen. He obviously played a good season with the Buffalo Bills, but they have decreased in talent. I feel like last year they did a lot better than they are this year. And I mean, it's just really hard when you have Tua, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes in your division to compete with those three. And that's probably the main reason, just because he has those other three quarterbacks who have had great seasons around him. And the only one that I think you could argue him playing in the Pro Bowl over would possibly be Patrick Mahomes, but I think it would be a pretty good argument. Next up for the AFC, we have our three running backs, and those running backs are Raheem Mostert, James Cook, and Derrick Henry. And all three of these guys are great, but obviously I would say Raheem Mostert has had the best season out of these three in the AFC. And this is another Miami Dolphin, obviously. So clearly the Miami Dolphins are having a good season because they have quite a few Pro Bowlers this season. So that is a good look on this team and the organization. But I mean, Raheem Mostert has been going off for this team this year, and he's been one of the most surprising players this year for me, honestly. Nobody expected him, I don't think, to blow up like this. and especially with Davon Chain, who was also having a great rookie season. I think that it is really hard when you also have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to get the ball enough to play as well as Raheem Mostert did. Now, James Cook was a sneaky guy this year, I feel like. I feel like he snuck in a lot of yards that a lot of people didn't notice, and nobody really noticed how great James Cook played. And he's another person, like, I'm really surprised of how good he did this year with a great receiver like Stephon Diggs. And you also have Gabe Davis, who is a inconsistent player, but when he does play good, he plays pretty solid football. And they also have Josh Allen, who is a good scrambler. So he's another guy who he has a lot of talent around him, and that definitely could have affected how good he did this season, but he still remained good even though he has that talent around him. And finally, we have Derrick Henry, who has been a beast on the field for years. And with the Tennessee Titans team, I feel like that's the exact opposite. I mean, they don't have a great amount of talent besides like DeAndre Hopkins, but they besides DeAndre Hopkins, they have no other talent on their team. So that is a good thing for Derrick Henry, obviously, because they're gonna hand him the ball more because they don't have as many receivers to throw to as say like the Buffalo Bills or the Miami Dolphins, who have other options, which is why Derrick Henry is kind of a like clear pick for a Pro Bowl because he doesn't have anybody else to where they're throwing to. Like they're just gonna hand the ball to him a lot of times, I feel like, and he's just that power running back. So that's a big reason why Derrick Henry did pretty good this season. And then for our snub, I'm going to go with Breece Hall. I feel like he could have replaced Derrick Henry, but it definitely could be an argument just because Derrick Henry is a great running back. But I feel like Breece Hall is just a beast on the Jets. And I feel like the Jets could have relied on him more this season than they already did, with Aaron Rodgers being out and having no actual solid QB, because Zach Wilson isn't a good QB, and I think they're playing Trevor Siemian this week, so they don't have a great QB, is my point. But I feel like they could have used Breece Hall even more than they already did. They could have not had at all, even though they have a great receiver, Garrett Wilson. But I mean, Breece Hall should have done a lot better than he already did, I feel like. Next up, we have AFC wide receivers, and we have Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, and Jamar Chase, who all four are great receivers. So starting off with Tyreek Hill, obviously he had a great season, and Tyreek Hill is just a great wide receiver overall. He has played very well alongside Tua since he arrived in Miami, and even with having Jalen Waddle on his team as well, he still maintained his greatness, and he has continued to be great with another good wide receiver by his side. So he didn't let having another good wide receiver affect him, and still got the ball and got open plenty of times to become a Pro Bowler. Next, we have Amari Cooper, who lost Nick Chubb at the beginning of the season and has Deshaun Watson as his QB. Well, had Deshaun Watson as his QB until he got injured. And then he had Joe Flacco, who also played good. So with him being one of the only targets really on the team and not having a crazy good running back. I mean, they had Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, who aren't terrible, but aren't obviously on the same level as Nick Chubb. But without having Nick Chubb or any other great receivers to throw to, I feel like this is an easy way for Amari Cooper to get into the Pro Bowl, because he's going to be scoring all the touchdowns. He's a great touchdown scorer as it is. So he's going to be scoring all those touchdowns for the Cleveland Browns, which is what led him into the Pro Bowl, I feel like. And like I've said multiple times, there's a lack of talent with this Cleveland Browns team, so that allowed Amari Cooper to get the ball more and get more touchdowns and play better. Next up, we have Keenan Allen, who has been crushing it this year, and he had Justin Herbert for a great portion of the season, who has also been playing really well. And with Keenan Allen, I mean, they have Austin Eckler running that ball quite a bit, so he does have other talent like that, and Quentin Johnson, and I want to say I'm pretty sure Mike Williams was hurt for a good amount of the season, but I can definitely double check on that. Because Keenan Allen I know he was doing really, yeah. Mike Williams only ended up playing 3 games this season, and those were at the beginning of the season. So that also led to Keenan Allen being their best wide receiver, which led to him getting the ball more. But they all, like I did say, they also do have Austin Eckler, who they should also be relying on quite a bit. I mean, they did give him the ball quite a bit. He was a pretty solid running back for them this year. And I think that Keenan Allen just performed better than Austin Eckler was. Finally, we have Jamar Chase, who, in my opinion, was an interesting pick because I feel like he struggled a little bit without Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow obviously had the injury that had him out for a great portion of the season. So I feel like he struggled a little bit, not saying that he did terrible, but I think that he I don't know that he was on a Pro Bowl level without Joe Burrow. I think that Joe Burrow being gone affected him quite a bit, and I think that there is definitely one guy that could replace Jamar Chase. So the snub that I'm thinking of for wide receivers in the AFC is Davante Adams. I mean, he is a great wide receiver, and even with Aiden O'Connell as a rookie quarterback starting for quite a bit of the season, I feel like Davante Adams still had a pretty solid season, and that's with Aiden O'Connell. So, I mean, I feel like it was just really hard for Davante Adams to do as good as he has in the past with a better quarterback like Aaron Rodgers than he has with a quarterback like I just had Aiden O'Connell. Like Aiden O'Connell and Aaron Rodgers are clearly not on the same level or anywhere near the same level, so it was definitely a little bit of a struggle for Davante Adams this season, but I feel like he still could be argued to be in the Pro Bowl over Jamar Chase. And finally, we're going to end off the AFC offense with the tight ends. We're not going to worry about the fullback, but we're going to end it off with the tight ends. And those tight ends are going to be Travis Kelce and David Njoku. And we have already mentioned Travis Kelce earlier in this episode, where we talked about how he has been struggling towards the end of the season, but he was playing really good football at the beginning of the season. The first probably, I would say, 3/4 of the season, he was playing really good football. He just struggled a little bit at the end. So there's no doubt in my mind that Travis Kelce deserves this spot. He's been a great tight end for quite a while and probably a top 2 tight end in the league between him and George Kittle for quite a while. So, like I said, no doubt in my mind, Travis Kelce 100% deserves this spot. As for David Njoku, he has been playing phenomenal for the Cleveland Browns, and he is one of those other receivers that I didn't think about when I was talking about Amari Cooper. He is another receiver that's getting the ball quite a bit at that tight end position. So he has been playing pretty well with Joe Flacco. I'd say he probably had Joe Flacco for maybe half the season. So even with Joe Flacco, David Njoku's still been playing pretty good. And I feel like he also is a player who deserved this spot. And I didn't really expect him to do as great as he did this season either. He played pretty well this season, and I didn't really expect that out of him. Now, moving on to the NFC Pro Bowl roster, or I mean, technically just really the 49ers. We can literally just call this team the 49ers, mixed in with a little bit of Dallas Cowboys. But we have, at quarterbacks, we have Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and Matt Stafford. So, as for Brock Purdy, obviously, he played very well and only had one significantly bad game, which was against the Ravens, and he struggled a little bit around the time of his concussion, but overall played a really great season. He was leading in multiple stats for a lot of the season, or he was like top 3 in most of them. So Brock Purdy, as a young QB, has been playing phenomenal, and also Mr. Irrelevant. He was the very last pick in his draft class, which is very impressive that he's playing as good as he is for being the last pick. Nobody expected Brock Purdy to be a starter in the NFL. And, I mean, he's also had great receivers around him, so there's no way that he really can not succeed. Like, he has to succeed with the team that he has around him, with players like Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. So some players that we are going to see later in this episode that are also in the Pro Bowl helped him succeed a lot, I feel like. Next up, we have Dak Prescott, who has been playing phenomenal this season and could 100% be a MVP candidate. And he's another player who has a great team around him. I mean, he has Tony Pollard at running back, and then he has Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup at the wide receivers. So he has a great wide receiver core, and he also has Jake Ferguson at tight end, who's been playing pretty well. But Dak Prescott has been having a good season, and he has been known in the past for throwing a lot of interceptions, but he has overcome that and made it to the Pro Bowl and possibly even making it to the MVP race. I mean, there's no debate that he shouldn't be in the Pro Bowl. I mean, he's been a phenomenal quarterback, especially towards the end of the season. I feel like a lot of the quarterbacks were struggling at the beginning, but he has been playing pretty solid football all year, and especially he's been playing especially well at the end of the season. And real quick, I just want to check to see. Yeah, this season he only has 8 interceptions this season, which is definitely better than previous seasons. I just want to see his previous years. This year he had 8. Last year he had 15. So he has nearly half of what he had last year, which is really good on that improvement scale. And in 2021 he had 10, which is still worse than what he has this year. He's definitely done better than he did the last 2 years. And in 2020, he only played 5 games, because that's the year that he ended up breaking his ankle. I want to say, I want to say that was the year that he ended up breaking his ankle, unless that was last season. But I'm pretty sure that was a few seasons ago. So he only ended up throwing 4, but he only played 5 games. And the year before that was 11. The year before that was 8. The year before that was 13. So he has been throwing over 10 interceptions for like multiple years of his career. So he's definitely improved on that this season, and I feel like his experience has helped him with that. I mean, he's obviously getting older, so I feel like that could have definitely helped him become a better quarterback with his accuracy and not throwing as many interceptions. And our final quarterback is Matt Stafford, which honestly for me was a surprising pick. I feel like there definitely was a couple quarterbacks that I would take over Matt Stafford personally, but Matt Stafford also wasn't a quarterback that I was watching a ton this season, so I can't really say that he was playing terrible because I'm not really sure. And I'm looking at his stats right now, and I mean, he threw for nearly 4,000 yards in 15 games, and he had 24 touchdowns with 11 interceptions. So I mean, he wasn't playing terrible, but I wouldn't say that he is at a Pro Bowl level, sorry. I and I think that I mean, he's only on a 63% completion percentage, which I mean, that's not terrible, but I want to compare him to a couple other players, and I feel like for me that's just a surprising pick. I mean, he has a lot of good players around him, and let's see. Yeah, I feel like there's a couple other players I'm going to talk about in a second that could have been picked over him. But I mean, he has like Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, all like around him that he can pass the ball to or hand it off to that I feel like helped him succeed a lot. But let's just talk about the snubs real quick. So this time I have 2 snubs, and one of them may be a little biased. But first we have Jalen Hurts, and I mean, he had a pretty solid season. I mean, he is a great rushing QB, but he also threw for nearly 4,000 yards, and that was on 66% completion percentage, which is better than Matt Stafford. And he only threw one less touchdown than Matt Stafford. He threw 3 more interceptions, but I mean, that's not really I wouldn't say it's too bad. And I want to see, it doesn't show his rushing stats on here. Um, oh, here we go. Rushing. He this season had 15 rushing touchdowns, which is really good for a QB. So he had 15 rushing and 23 passing with 601 rushing yards, which is worse than last season. But if we go back and look at Matt Stafford, we'll look to see how many rushing touchdowns Matt Stafford had. 0. And he had only 65 rushing yards. So Jalen Hurts is more of a all-around player, and I feel like he 100% could replace Matt Stafford in this Pro Bowl. Another player that, like I said, may be a little biased that I am looking at is Jordan Love. And Jordan Love is obviously my team's QB, so that may be the reason why I think he's been playing better. But Jordan Love, I think his only problem was that he had a lot more success at the end of the season than he did at the beginning of the season. But if we look at Jordan Love's game log for this year, he threw for 30 touchdowns with 63% completion percentage, which I want to say was better than Matt Stafford. I think Matt Stafford was at 61. And he had more touchdowns than Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford had 24, and Jordan Love had 30. And Jordan Love, I feel like, has nowhere near as much talent as Matt Stafford had this year. Matt Stafford had Puka Nacua, who is a rookie, and he had Cooper Kupp, who is a vet, who has played in the Super Bowl and is a great wide receiver and also a good rookie with Kyron Williams. So I mean, he had quite a bit of like talent around him with vets and with young rookies. We have a whole receiving core of like all rookies. Our tight end, our both two of our tight ends are rookies, and we have like four young receivers. So Jordan Love is young too. Not to like he's a young guy too, and he also had nearly 4,000 passing yards. And Jordan Love is also pretty solid rushing. He had four rushing touchdowns this season on 248 yards. He's not known for his rushing, but he can run the ball a little bit. And obviously he had a better rushing season than Matt Stafford had. So, I mean, either one of these quarterbacks with Jordan Love or Jalen Hurts, I feel like could possibly replace Matt Stafford. And I mean, also with Jordan Love, I didn't mention he only has 11 interceptions, which for his first season starting in the NFL is not terrible. So, and Matt Stafford also had 11. So, honestly, Jordan Love has also played pretty decent. Next up for our three NFC running backs in the Pro Bowl, we have Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, and Kyron Williams. So we're going to start off with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey has been playing phenomenal football this year. And Christian McCaffrey is a player that we have known to get major injuries in the past, and which has affected his play. But this season he stayed really healthy and had a great season. And I feel like he helped out the 49ers a lot. He's an explosive player. He's super quick, and he scores all the time. Like he just gets tons of yards. Like he's just an insane player. He's just a beast on that field. And no doubt that he is the best running back in the NFC and possibly in the whole NFL. I mean, the only player that you might be able to I don't even think I think he's the clear number one running back in the whole NFL right now. I mean, like in previous years, we've seen Derrick Henry play really well and be on the same level as him. But not Christian McCaffrey. Derrick Henry didn't. I don't think Derrick Henry played nearly as well as Christian McCaffrey did this season, and maybe you could compare him with Raheem Mostert, but I don't even think that would be. I don't think Raheem Mostert is on a good enough level to be compared with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey has just been a beast this year. Next up, we have DeAndre Swift, which, I mean, he did play pretty well this season, and I think that he is a solid candidate, but I feel like there may be other candidates in the NFC that could have replaced him. But, I mean, he did play pretty solid football, I feel like. And I think that it's hard because he's also on a pretty good team with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I mean, you really can't put you really can't doubt if he should be in the Pro Bowl or not with such a good team around him, I feel like. But there definitely is, I think, one player that I could debate whether or not should be in the Pro Bowl over DeAndre Swift. And finally, we have Kyron Williams, who had a phenomenal season with the Los Angeles Rams. He's been playing great all season and definitely has helped this team out a lot in winning some games. And I feel like he definitely should have a Pro Bowl spot with the I mean, there's other running backs in the NFL or in the NFC that have been doing pretty good, but I feel like he's the most consistent running back out of those others that didn't make it to make he made the Pro Bowl because of his consistency. I feel like he's a pretty consistent player. He can get you a lot of yards in every single game. So I feel like that's a good reason for him to make the Pro Bowl. And I feel like the snub for this Pro Bowl is Bijan Robinson. I feel like you could put up a good debate that he could replace DeAndre Swift. I feel like with him being on the Atlanta Falcons, I feel like that caused him problems with getting to the Pro Bowl just because they aren't a great team. He didn't lead them to very many wins, but he's also a rookie. He's going to end up getting better, and I feel like in the near future, we could see him in a Pro Bowl, whether that be next year or a few years from now. Next up, we have our 4 wide receivers for the NFC, and those receivers being CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, and Puka Nacua. So, with CeeDee Lamb, obviously, he's the clear number 1 receiver in the NFC. He's been playing phenomenal for the Cowboys, and he has definitely helped Dak succeed quite a bit this season. And I feel like overall he's helped the Dallas Cowboys succeed this season. And he is, even though I really dislike the Dallas Cowboys, I think that he is probably one of my favorite receivers to watch in the NFL. He's just a really exciting player to watch, and I like to watch CeeDee Lamb play and just do his thing on even good defenses. He can play very well even against some of the best. Now we have AJ Brown, and I mean, I didn't watch AJ Brown too much this season, but when I did watch the Philadelphia Eagles games, I feel like I didn't really see AJ Brown doing much. So I feel like AJ Brown, like I know he was doing really good last year. I seen him playing quite a bit last year, and he was playing very well. But I don't know, I feel like he just wasn't playing on that same level this year, and I feel like he could definitely be in question whether he should be a Pro Bowler or not. But I think that he is a very talented player, and I'm not saying that he is a talented player, but I just can't say that I watched him play great this season, because when I did watch them, they seemed to use other players like maybe Devontae Smith, or they would run the ball a little bit with either Jalen Hurts or DeAndre Swift. So I feel like it's just a very hard thing to see AJ Brown in the Pro Bowl with. I feel like his talent from last year has just decreased a little bit. Next up, we have Mike Evans, who even with Baker Mayfield has had a good season. And I mean, Baker Mayfield didn't play terrible this season. He played pretty well. So I think he definitely deserves to be in this Pro Bowl. And I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't have a terrible team at all. They have Chris Godwin, and they have at running back Rachaad White, who has been playing pretty solid this season. So even with those players, he's able to make the Pro Bowl, which is very good for him to see, very good to see him do that even with those good players and with him. And finally, we have the rookie Puka Nacua, who has been playing phenomenal for the Rams this season. And apparently he's been playing better than Cooper Kupp, they say. And I feel like I could definitely see that he's been playing better than Cooper Kupp. I feel like Cooper Kupp, with his injury at the beginning of the season, just hasn't shown enough this season to prove that he's better than Puka Nacua. I feel like Puka Nacua, coming off his rookie season, is playing great. With being a rookie, I feel like some players struggle adjusting to the league, and they have problems sometimes getting into a rhythm and playing great consistently. But Puka Nacua has been playing great pretty consistently, and even with Cooper Kupp's return, he still was playing pretty great. And I feel like that could be hard to do for somebody who is playing on the same team as like a former like top like offensive player of the year candidate. I don't know if Cooper Kupp ever ended up winning offensive player of the year, but I want to say he was a candidate at one point. I want to say that was last year. So because he was playing pretty good last year. But now that they have Puka Nacua, who knows how much they're going to use Cooper Kupp. Now moving on to tight ends, we have George Kittle and Sam Laporta. So for George Kittle, I mean, obviously we've seen George Kittle. He's been great for quite a while now, and he's undoubtedly the best selection for this Pro Bowl. I mean, he has played great alongside players like Brock Purdy at quarterback. They have great receivers. So even with those great receivers that Brock Purdy is also throwing the ball to, he's still getting the ball, which shows that he is a good tight end. And I mean, other than that, there's not much to say about George Kittle. He's just unexplainably great. And then we have Sam Laporta, who is a rookie, and he's been playing great for the Detroit Lions. He's been playing pretty solid this season, and I don't think that this was a mistake picking him to play in the Pro Bowl. I think that he has been playing pretty good, and I don't know any other tight ends in the NFC besides maybe one that has been playing good football this year. And I think that Sam Laporta is just he's been constantly having good games, and I feel like the other person I'm thinking of just isn't consistent. So the one snub that I'm thinking of that could possibly make it, but I don't think is on a good enough level, is the Chicago Bears tight end Cole Kmet. He's an absolute tank, and he's played pretty well this season, but he's also played inconsistent this season, which I think has affected his status of being able to make the Pro Bowl. I think that Sam Laporta has just been a little more consistent than Cole Kmet, but Sam Laporta also has players like Jahmyr Gibbs, who they're handing the ball off to quite a bit, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who they're also throwing the ball to a bit. But Cole Kmet, I mean, they don't really have any other great receivers, so they should be throwing the ball to Cole Kmet more than a player like Darnell Mooney, who hasn't really been doing great this season. And I mean, they don't have any great running backs. I mean, Khalil Herbert has been playing pretty good this season, but not great. So I think that the Bears just aren't using Cole Kmet enough for him to be in the Pro Bowl. That's going to be it for today's episode. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the 2024 Pro Bowl. And we'll see you guys in a couple weeks here on the Hoops and Stuff podcast.